Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special interview with a very special guest. I'm joined by current founder and CEO of Bruin Sports Capital, George Pyne. George, how are you doing? How is the summer treating you? And what's been some fun things on your schedule recently that are keeping you busy in the summer?
Well, Ian, and thanks. It's great to be here. It's been a good summer. I was busy with the racing series we started. SRX kept me busy on the weekends. And my daughter Rachel was looking at some colleges. So between SRX, my daughter Rachel, and we've made some acquisitions. We acquired a company called Full Swing, which is a golf technology company, and a company called Odds Checker, which I affectionately describe as the Expedia of gambling. So it's been a busy summer.
Wow. And yes, gambling is certainly, obviously, it's taking off right now. It's accessible to everybody. And I heard about the golf acquisition. It seems like a lot of fun there and a lot of great technology. And Rachel, she was great with the TV program, NCTV 78, an alumnus of that. So I know that she'll probably do great in college as well. So let's go and rewind it before you even went to college. And let's start with where you grew up. You grew up in Milford, Massachusetts. You ended up attending Choate Rosemary Hall in Wallingford, Connecticut for high school. And then obviously you went to Brown to play football. But before we get to that, did you know from a young age that, with your family history with football, that you really wanted to pursue football at the collegiate level, given that your grandfather, your father, and a lot of your family was invested in the sport?
Yeah, well, I mean, I grew up in a small town, and my dad's name was George Pyne. My granddad's name was George Pyne.
Yep.
They both played in the NFL, so I always wanted to be like my dad and my granddad. So football is always a big part of my life. I never obviously got to see my dad play, but I did get to go. He was a high school official, and so I would go to a freshman game on Friday, a varsity game on Saturday, and a JV game on Monday. So it's a big part of my life, and it's been good.
Yeah, your family actually became the first family ever to play three generations of professional football. You mentioned your father played for the Boston Patriots, and then your grandfather played for the Providence Steamroll of the NFL in 1931. And then your brother was one of the greatest players to ever play for Virginia Tech. So really a rich history. And you played offensive line, correct?
I did, and my brother Jim, like you said, was a great player. He got his number retired at Virginia Tech, one of four players in the history of the program. And my other brother Dave was captain at Lafayette and was all Patriot League. So, in my family, you were playing football.
And I know you ended up becoming a captain at Brown, and you had a lot of great individual accolades. But playing on the offensive line, I think it teaches you a lot of lessons, right? Especially about how to stay humble and how to accept your role with the team, because offensive linemen, they might not always get the credit. And in business and in life, you might not always get the credit for the things that you do positively, but your impact is just as great as anyone else on the team.
Yeah, no, and the game has changed so much from when I played till now. So when I was in college, if there's a lot more running of the football, right? It was not the spread offense, and so my whole thing was, hey, you lean on a guy, and then the fourth quarter, you wear the guy down. And so in business, it's very similar too, where you just kind of keep working hard, keep at it, and you want to finally the other guy gets tired and you break a few long runs. Of course, nobody runs the ball anymore these days, so the game's changed. But very much all the lessons you learn being on a team, winning and losing. When you're in sports, it doesn't matter what color you are, what your gender is, how you identify your gender, whether you're rich or poor. You're on a level playing field, and the best person can win. And I think that's what makes sports a great tool for which young people can learn.
Definitely. And it's become a big part of your life ever since. So when you were growing up, did you have any idea of what you wanted to do with your post-football life in a sense? What were your early aspirations before you worked with your family in the real estate business and then went on to do great things with NASCAR, IMG, and now with Bruin Sports Capital? What did you originally aspire to do when you got to, your post-football career?
I have to really say, I never really knew what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to compete and be successful. And, football, I got hurt a lot in high school. So I spent 2.5 years in a cast, and that's some really tough injuries. And so, but I put a lot of effort into football. And so then when I went out in life and I put the same effort into life, actually life I thought was a little easier than the football. So, So I don't know. I never really knew what I wanted to do, but there are a few good things. I was able to work for a lot of really good people. I always kind of gravitated to growth segments. And I just really, really put a lot of effort into. I really worked hard, to be honest with you. I mean, I think hard work is undervalued. I mean, I think if you work harder than everybody and you do it for a sustained period of time, good things are probably going to happen to you.
Definitely. And not only do you need to be able to work hard and have the drive, which it seems like you've certainly had throughout your career, but you have to be able to deal with high pressure situations. You work with the Atlanta Chamber of Commerce after working with your real estate business, your family's real estate business in Massachusetts. And Stan Williams, who was a former president of the Atlanta Chamber of Commerce, he said that really out the gate, they threw you into some big, intense projects and you just dove right in and came up with some really great solutions. So just tell me a little bit about that experience. You've lived in the Northeast your entire life and you moved down to Atlanta, Georgia. How was that for you? And how do you feel like you handled that situation so well, I guess, considering it was a completely new environment for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was a big deal for me. So I was like 25 or 26 years old. I had $5,000. My wife and I were newly married. I had a car that had 170,000 miles on it. Only two of the four doors worked. My wife's car had 90,000 miles and didn't have any air conditioning. And we off would go to Atlanta, Georgia. But it was a great experience for me, first working for the school system, working with the Chamber of Commerce, studying the schools. The reason I took the job was that all the CEOs and presidents of the local companies were on my committee. And they told me if I would do a good job, one of those guys would hire me. Unfortunately, I uncovered a lot of challenges at the school. I wrote a book that got published on education in Atlanta. The school board got voted out. The superintendent resigned, and I got a job working for Sam Williams at the Portman Company, who was a member of the board that I reported into. And then, of course, at Portman, I was very fortunate to work on the second biggest debt restructuring in the world at the time. It was a $2 billion debt restructuring. And I was the guy that I kind of wrote the reports. I worked with a team of people, but I actually was the guy that wrote the copy for the presentations to the lenders on how we were going to get out of our challenges. And we were in about 17 different industries. So that was a great learning experience to me. So when I look back on it, my advice would be to a young person is I identified a growth market. Atlanta at that time was booming, and I worked in an opportunity that gave me exposure to CEOs and presidents at a young age, and that allowed me to kind of go up the ladder faster. And then just to finish it off, so we had in Atlanta in the early '90s, we had the Super Bowl coming in the Olympics, and it was a very difficult time in real estate. So I said, hey, we ought to go in the sports business and run events in our buildings. And my boss was like, you're crazy. But finally, he yielded and let me do it on the side. And I started a sports business with them, Portman. And that's how I got into sports. And then went down to NASCAR, signed them up as a client. And then a year or so later, they hired me. So kind of an odd route. You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't say you could draw up that, hey, this is the way to do it. But I think a couple things. You go into a growth market. I thought Atlanta was a place of opportunity. Take a job that gives you opportunity. And then also Sam Williams was a great guy and was so supportive of me. And I think all of those things really helped me get ahead.
It certainly seems like it definitely gave you the jump start. And you mentioned you went from Portman Companies to NASCAR, who was a client, and they recruited you there. You became just the second non-family member to join the board. So was that a lot of pressure on you to be given so much trust, in a sense, to get the job done at NASCAR? And what did it mean to you to get selected for that role and the trust that came with it?
Yeah, it's something I was always proud of because, I went to Brown. I was from Massachusetts, and ended up running the company at NASCAR and going on the board. And, you don't get that position unless people trust you. And so I was proud of that. Pressure, I never really felt any pressure. I was young. I was full of enthusiasm. I thought that NASCAR had tremendous potential, and I wanted to work as hard as I could to realize that potential. And, if you go back and look from 95 to 2005, we had an incredible run. When I got there, it was called Winston Cup. When I left, it was called NASCAR. When I got there were 16 races on the national network. When I left, we were on Fox and NBC. And, when I got there, we were primarily a Southeastern sport with one office. When I left, we had races all over the country and 9 offices in different locations. across the country. So it was a great experience. I'd say the number one takeaway for the people in NASCAR is they're really nice people. They're as nice as they seem on television.
Yeah, and you certainly need to work as a team and to have that genuine chemistry and kindness in order to get those successful things done and to grow a business like that. And a big thing, not only in NASCAR, but in all sports, Roger Penske, who is the founder and chairman of Penske Corporation, he said that you looked at it not only from the driver's side in their perspective, but from the commercial side. How important is it in sports, not only to look at it from what you can gain, what kind of opportunities you can do to get your product out there, but also to understand the athletes as well and how big a role they play in making the sport as big as it could potentially become?
It's kind of a unique, so I grew up, I was playing football my whole life and in basketball as well. And I go into auto racing. My wife taught me how to drive a stick shift. I never changed motor all my life. I wasn't a car guy,
No.
But it allowed me to look at things at a different perspective and really see things maybe that people that have been there a long time, hadn't seen. The other thing that was helpful was playing football, was a lot like being in the NASCAR garage. I mean, the people that to strap into a race car, you're a tough person.
Mm-hmm.
Jump over the wall with 42 cars going by you at 65 miles an hour, you're kind of tough, right? And so I was able to, the garage area to me really was a lot like a football locker room. And so that was beneficial. And I think the fact that I didn't come from the sport and I brought in a different perspective was helpful. And I recruited a lot of people. I recruited people from Disney and Procter and Gamble. I recruited people from Richard Gephardt and John Kerry. And I brought in a real eclectic group of people that thought differently. Mm-hmm. And then we always had a respect for the sport. So I think that was kind of some of the things that worked for me while I was there.
And you mentioned recruiting and bringing people in, and that's really what you've been able to execute on really well with your latest venture with Bruin Sports Capital. Quoted Dan Gilbert, the founder of Quicken Loan, said that you've really used this opportunity to just use all the networking and all the connections that you've been able to compile over the years with various different amounts of people with outsider perspective and bring them in a positive way. So you've already given a lot of great advice to young people out there, but networking wise, just how important is it for people my age, for people in college, just getting out of college, to network and to do it the right way?
I'd say the first thing, it's the most important thing. And it's something you need to be doing for your whole life. Yesterday I visited some people. I didn't want anything. I always like to see people when I don't want something, mm-hmm. because in case someday you want something, the people aren't going to recoil when they take your call. And I always remember when I was at Brown and I wanted to do something else besides a family business. And I went to the career office and the lady said, I said, here's my resume. And I was pretty confident of myself. And the lady said, get over yourself, rip up your resume. Here's the alumni book, start calling people. It's actually the best advice I ever got. And she said, too, call 3 people, ask them if they know 3 people. Next thing you know, you have a 9-person network. Mm-hmm. Don't ask them for a job, ask them for advice and what you can do. And I really just think building a network and interacting with people is an important part of growing as a person, but also in business.
And do you remember, I guess, maybe some of the first few connections that you ever made, or really who are some of the Brown alumni potentially who helped you out early on and you reached out to them, maybe just hoping they'd respond, but maybe they just came up in a way that you were surprised about in a good way?
Yeah, no, I actually networked. I was nice. So after the football games, I used to go meet the alumni. Mm-hmm. And so when I was looking for a job, I called a guy in DC that put me in touch with a guy in Atlanta who's the president of the Bar Association, was a quarterback at Brown. And he set up interviews for me. And the guy that ran the school study that I went to in Atlanta was the guy that went to Brown as well. And even today, my largest investor, the CEO of that firm, is from Brown. So I think, the importance of networking and also the importance of being a good person, because, how you act throughout your whole life, it's connected. And so I think, consistently being who you are is important. So my relationships that I built from the time I was 18 years old, are still impacting me positively, today at 55, which is crazy, but true.
And something that you've always had and that you've always kept with you as a genuine person is that you're a big thinker. And that's usually a good thing with people who have good ideas. And Roger Goodell, the commissioner of the NFL, said that with you, when you think big, you follow it up and you make it happen. How important is it in business and in life in general that when you promise people something, you execute and you get it done sooner rather than later?
I mean, I think you always want to follow through. I mean, my reputation has always been, I'll do what I say I'm going to do. And, I'm running a company now for 7 years, and, hey, I can back it up because I am the founder and CEO of the company. I think it's critically important. I think the other thing in life and in business is to have a plan, because if you have a plan and you're off, you won't be off by 1,000%. You might be off by 200%. But if you have no plan, you can go off by 1,000%. And I will tell you, my biggest failures in business have always come when we didn't have a plan of attack. And so I think having a plan is important, and then you have to execute the plan.
Definitely. It works in sports and it works in business. If you don't follow the game plan, then things will usually go awry. I know your family means a lot to you, and all your kids have done a lot of phenomenal things already, and they're not even that old. But I know you just love going to a lot of their games too, especially with Brendan and Drew. Brendan played in college. Drew's still there right now at the collegiate level. And I've covered high school sports my whole life, and I love it. But just tell me, I know you've worked with a lot of massive events, NASCAR, Super Bowl, championships, but the magic of a high school game, isn't it just something that never wears on you? Just being able to sit back and enjoy a game when you know everything's going right?
Yeah, no, I just think the whole high school experience is fantastic, and playing in the high school athletics as a person or watching it as a parent is really hard to beat. I mean, if you go up the ladder, I always think that, Pop Warner was a lot of fun. High school is a lot of fun, but I think they all were a lot of fun. But you can't beat high school. And certainly playing at New Canaan High School, where Drew played, was an amazing experience. And it's just fun to play at a place where sports are important. So I think it's a great thing, and we're very fortunate to be part of it.
And I guess to tag on to that and a bit of a different look at, sports and young athletes, you were the former president and a board member of IMG Sports and Entertainment. You were responsible for record revenue and earning growth across multiple commercial lines of business. But looking at it at that route, what do you think IMG as a brand and as an academy down in Florida too has done for young athletes in preparing them for the next stages of their career? And how proud are you of the work you did there, really bringing that up and doing a lot of great expansive work there?
Yeah, well, so IMG just as a company was in 30 countries. We had 2,500 people around the world and had all different types of lines of business. One of the lines of business was IMG Academy. And, when we took it over, it had never made money in 30 years. And it really was a place where you would try to find the next Maria Sharapova. But the problem is there are only a few Maria Sharapovas, but there are a lot of people that want to really become great at things. So we took the experience of training people to produce great athletes, and we turned that to training people to be really good athletes in terms of really getting into college. And so we focused on American sports, so baseball, basketball, lacrosse, women's soccer, and of course the football program down there that we launched, which last year won the national title, was really, quite a football program. So it was a fun, that was a fun part of my job, because everybody there was trying to be great. But there was somebody else, that was one of 9 businesses that we had. So unfortunately, I could only spend limited time at IMG Academy. But we're proud of what they did, and they've done a fantastic job, and it continues on today. I mean, I think it's, as I said, they've had a lot of success, and a lot of great players have been through there. My son Brendan, who played there after I left, had like 14 players on his high school football team in the NFL right now. So wow. It's quite a place.
And congrats to your son as well, because he just won a bowl game recently with Buffalo. So a great way to cap off his collegiate career, and his experience at IMG certainly served him well. My last question is a simple one. You've been with Bruin Sports Capital now for 6 years running, and there's a lot of different ways you could describe it. But in 1 to 2 sentences, how would you describe what you do right now and what your goals are with the company?
We're a global technology company, and we operate today, and I think we have 50 offices in 20 countries around the world. And we import and export the best technology in the world in different lines of business. And we back management to change industries. And we've had a lot of fun. It's very rewarding. That's the good news. The bad news is we have a lot of work left to go. So I'm proud of our company. I'm proud of all the CEOs who run the different businesses, and we just got to keep it going.
I'm sure you're ready to tackle those problems and continue to grow for the next 6 years and for however long it takes you to get to where you want to go. Thank you so much for joining me, Mr. Pyne. It's really been a pleasure, and good luck to you in everything that you set out to do in the near future.
Thank you, Ian, and good luck at Syracuse. I'll be following you.
Thank you. Hopefully I don't freeze to death.
Take care.